The company has proposed an adjacent open-pit sulfide mine to be located between Hoyt Lakes and Babbitt, Minnesota, on land in the Superior National Forest. The proposed mine is sited between the Embarrass River and the Partridge River, both of which flow into the St. Louis River, which in turn flows into Lake Superior. Any contamination from this mine threatens all of these water bodies, the watershed, and the human and wildlife inhabitants within that watershed. Another company, Franconia Minerals, is proposing an underground mine about 30 miles to the northeast.
Franconia is exploring, believe it or not, on the bottom of Birch Lake. Birch Lake is an important recreational lake near Babbitt, Minnesota, south of the Boundary Waters. Waters from the Kawishwe River flow out of the wilderness into Birch Lake, then back through the White Iron Chain and back into the Boundary Waters.
We're located on beautiful Birch Lake, just on the edge of the Boundary Waters.
Steve Koschak owns and operates River Point Resort, a second-generation family-run business on Birch Lake.
My wife and I, Jane, have owned this resort for almost 35 years, renting cabins and renting canoe trips for many, many years. I guess I'm concerned about the impact of what this mining is going to do on an environment as a whole. When it initially started, I think a lot of people were very, very much pro-mining. Now I think a lot of people are getting more educated and learning a little bit more about what's going to happen here, and especially with the sulfide pollution that could come. The issue here is if this area is an area that is worth putting an impact of a mine into it. We're going to put the whole area in jeopardy for 20 years of mining. I think we need to evaluate if this precious metal is worth that much. Is our environment worth less than that?
Franconia Minerals controls the majority of the land holdings around Birch Lake and is actively drilling to define the size of the ore bodies and study the feasibility of mining and processing these metals.
Drilling platforms on the lake and surrounding lakeshore are already impacting the experience of customers at the Koschak's resort.
They want trees, they want quiet, they want the serenity of Northwoods, they want to hear the wolf howl in the evening. They're not here to listen to the drone of the drill and the drone of heavy equipment going across the lake.
As a teacher, it's an ideal location to work with students in wilderness because of the high quality of nature here.
Minnesota native David Roloff teaches natural resource management at California State University in Sacramento. He spends summers near Birch Lake as an instructor at the Voyageur Outward Bound School.
Last summer on Birch Lake, a night didn't go by where we didn't hear drills going all night long. The other concern I had was, given where I was on Birch Lake, that I know that there are places inside the wilderness boundary where you can hear those drills. And if we can hear an exploratory drill, my concern is that a major development is going to be a much more long-term impact on wilderness character. And wilderness character includes the ability to be free of signs of humans, and the sound of drill rigs inside the Boundary Waters is deeply distressing.
Mixed veggies. And what do we have for dessert that night?
I run Paragus Northwoods Company. We are an outfitting business here in Ely, Minnesota. We've been here since 1979, and we're hoping to stay for a lot longer. Ely is at the edge of the Boundary Waters, in the middle of all of the entry points into the Boundary Waters canoe area. An expansion of an industrial complex just to our south along one of the entry points into Ely worries me as a business owner, that the image of the town and our business will be adversely affected. In addition to the environmental damage that sulfide ore mining possibly presents, I believe there's a possible economic disadvantage that worries me as as an ecotourism operator, selling trips into a wilderness area that has to be maintained in the image of the public as pristine.
Bob and Pat Tamman are retirees from Sedan, Minnesota. Pat worked for 30 years as a school teacher, and Bob worked in the iron mines as an electrician. As a former miner, Bob has first-hand knowledge of mining practices and their consequences.
And when I started working in the mines 40 years ago, most of us citizens weren't very well informed about wetlands and environmental issues. Sometimes we built our tailings dikes on land like this. We put waste piles on land like this. And then years later, you realize the tailings dikes are leaking, the waste piles are leaching, and so now we're dealing with those problems. Pat and I live in Sudan. We love our little underground mine in the old Sudan mine. That mine is still polluting our neighborhood. There's a little copper, a little cobalt in the water that seeps in from the groundwater. We're still dealing with a little pollution from a relatively benign mine. What's going to happen when we open up a sulfide ore body and have to deal with some real pollution?
Nancy Schult is the Water Project's coordinator for the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. Waters on the Fond du Lac Reservation lie downstream of the Polymet project and could be impacted by the mine.
I'm concerned that the state agencies responsible for permitting this are not considering how this kind of mining is different than the ferrous mining that we're all familiar with. And I would also point out that ferrous mining has had tremendous impact on the environment of northeastern Minnesota. And if you add the impacts that come from acid mine drainage and that are very unique to mining a sulfide ore body, I have no confidence that we're going to be able to do that kind of mining in this kind of an environment, a very wet environment, without seeing the same problems that have been seen around the world where this kind of mining takes place.
Also alarming is the pollution track record of this kind of mining in other parts of the country.
Several colleagues of mine did a study where they looked at every environmental impact statement that had been done on a hard rock metal mine in the United States. There were 200 and some. They did a detailed analysis of 20-some of these mines. And what they found was that if you had a metal sulfide mine located in an area near surfaced water and groundwater, which is what most of the upper Midwest is like, in about 80% or more of those cases, you had a violation of water quality standards associated with that mine.
The EPA, just I think a week or two ago, came out with a report in the Federal Register which again declared hard rock mining the #1 toxic polluter in the United States. And that's not based on mines from 20 or 30 years ago, that's based on mines that are in operation today. So it's not an ancient old problem that has long been solved, it's a problem that exists today.
We went to South Dakota, the old Dakota mine. We took a look at that, and the young engineer said it was going to cost between 40 and 140 million to clean up the mess left behind by a sulfide mining ore body. And it will require perpetual water treatment, even after they do the final cleanup. And so that's the concern we have